has come together and how does remain focused on ensuring our Canadian post-secondary students continue to have access to the academic materials and resources that they need. There's no doubt that this pandemic has forever changed how campus stores operate, but in many ways, the experience has demonstrated that campus stores are ready to adapt and to find new ways to deliver affordable course materials and general merchandise. You responded to the immediate challenges that were before you, and you've worked tirelessly on behalf of your institutions. Now more than ever, our institutions need their identity, and they need to deliver a good student experience, and you're a key part of that. You are an essential service. And it's because of your efforts that our students continue to have access to the information and resources that they need to be successful in their studies, no matter where they are in this world. So take a moment, reflect back on that, give yourself a pat in the back, thank your staff and those that help support your store through all of this. This is really your moment to smile. There's still a lot of work ahead of us, though. We all know that. You will continue to be pushed in challenges, whether it's by the publishers trying to squeeze you out or administration questioning everything you do. We will be faced with all sorts of challenges in the months ahead, but together with the people in this room and with those amongst our membership at large, we will continue to face those challenges, and we will adapt and we will find new solutions to keep our campus stores viable for the years ahead. And CSE and Campus Stores Canada, we're here to help. We support our member stores this past year by providing new ways for you to collaborate and share information. We'll continue to support our members as you continue to navigate through this pandemic and face the challenges that lie ahead. And this continues today. Because of the pandemic, we're not able to hold our annual conference face-to-face. We had planned to be in Toronto right now and to build off the incredible conference that we had last year in Niagara Falls, but instead, we're online, we're in front of our computers, we're attending another virtual meeting. I know you're all Zoomed out, so that's why we decided to go with Google Meet this time. But seriously, it's important for all members to come together, to have some sort of conference experience. The next 10 days are an opportunity for you to reflect on the past year, for you to hear about some of the success stories that members have had, and also to think about what needs to be done in the months ahead. We have a great lineup of sessions and speakers coming up, starting in just in a few moments with our opening keynote speaker, Kelsey Harmon Finn from NACAS. In total, we have a lineup of 3 keynote speakers. We have 2 open discussion sessions. We have 8 sessions with member store participation. In fact, we have 18 members presenting this year with who are representing 13 different member stores. We have a faculty panel. We have 3 sessions featuring our GM vendor partners. We have 1 mini virtual trade show session with our course material partners. In addition to all of that, we have our AGM tomorrow, and we have our summit meeting for store managers and directors on Friday. We also have a social event planned on Thursday evening this week. So if you want to join us to unwind, maybe play a few games, catch up with everybody, we encourage you to do that. The evening will start at 4 p.m. Eastern time and run for 3 hours until 7 p.m. Eastern. But we're not expecting you to be there and join us right at 4, and we're not expecting you to be there for the full 3 hours. Join when you can. Come at a time that works best for you, wherever you're located and in your time zone. We'll run different things each hour, so no matter when you join, there will always be something for you to do. Also wanted to highlight the GM vendor sessions that we have this week and next. We have 2 sessions on Thursday, January 28th, and 1 session on Thursday, February 4th. I'm asking you to please plan on attending these sessions. Our vendor partners are very important to CSC. Their participation in CSC helps bring in additional revenue for the association, which also allows us to run many of the programs that we're able to provide and that benefit the membership. Our vendor partners have paid for these presentation time slots, and they have put some time in to prepare for them. So these sessions will highlight some of the new products and the deals that they're offering. And like you, our vendor partners have had a difficult year. So please attend these sessions, and let's show some of our support back to them. Each member store also should have received 1 box of goodies sometime within the past week. They were addressed to the primary store contact we have on file for each of your stores. All these sample items were provided by our supporting vendor partners, so please send your thanks to Radley Prep, Fandazzlers, Bar Down Sports, and DGN Marketing. You may have also received a separate shipment from Targo Distribution. They missed the original shipment cutoff date, and they decided to ship their samples to you separately. So thank all of these vendors for providing these items. A big shout out also goes to the team at York University Bookstore, who put all the boxes together and coordinated the shipping of them for us. So thank you to everybody who's on the line here from York. Our full conference lineup, by the way, is available in your member space calendar. By now you should have found out where that is. You'll find links to each of the sessions there, and if you open them up, there is a session description there as well. Session information is also available on the CSC website. Just note that if you are looking on our website, the session times that are listed there are in the Eastern Time Zone. And as you can see, we have a lot coming up in the next 2 weeks. This is our first attempt at running an online conference like this. There's bound to be glitches along the way, presentations freezing, internet being down, all the things that go along with online events and meetings like this. Just ask that you be patient with us and allow us to work through the challenges that may pop up, but hopefully things will go off without too many hiccups. I also want to take a moment to personally thank Imelda May, who is now the bookstore manager at Capilano University. Imelda worked with me for a few months this past year and helped me put together all of the sessions for you. So the reason why we have such a good lineup of sessions this year is because of Imelda. So thank you, Imelda, wherever you are and amongst all the pictures there. And thank you also to the CSC board of directors for their support and guidance. I've tried to give the board as much space as possible this past year so that they could focus on their own stores during the pandemic. Yet they were there when I needed them. They offered help and support where they could, and they provided as much guidance to ensure that we were on the right track with everything. So thank you, everybody on the board. I also want to thank and send a shout out to Stephen Thomas from my office, who has helped so much with the technology and the behind the scenes logistics for this event. He's got 2 or 3 computers running simultaneously right now. He's trying to help manage things behind the scenes and try to keep everything running smoothly. Steve also helped build MemberSpace this past year. And speaking of which, you should have all logged in this morning through your MemberSpace or CSC Gmail account. Throughout the conference and afterwards, I really encourage members to use MemberSpace, to reach out to each other, to use the chat feature in MemberSpace, post questions in groups, check out the information that our partners are posting in MemberSpace in their drives. This tool is built to allow you to collaborate, and I encourage you to do that during this conference and afterwards. For many of you, you're using Google Meet for the first time. I'm going to turn it over to Steve briefly just to give you a few pointers on how to make your Google Meet experience a little bit better. So Steve, if you want to say a few words, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Neat. Sorry, I'm in the middle of answering emails as people are trying to get in. Give me 1 second here. Let's share my screen. And I'm just going to show you guys really quickly. I think most of you have now seen all of this, but I'll run through some of the features of Google Meet real quick with everybody. So this is Google Meet. We'll talk a lot about some of the most important features first of all. So as I hover over the window, you can see that there is the turn off and off microphone. I think most of us have figured out how to do that so far. There is also video mute. So if you need to step away for a few minutes, you can go ahead and video mute yourself and you will disappear. We understand working and living at home for a lot of you, or even in the office, there's lots of interruptions that happen. So go ahead and feel free to step away when you need to. The other big features that we want to talk about as far as all of this goes, there is the raise hand feature. So, but we're going to use a slightly different method just because there are 128 of you on the call right now. And I have a feeling that number is going to go up a little bit more. It's hard for us to catch all the raised hands. So we'll probably be using, or we're going to encourage everybody to use the Q&A function more so. The other one that I really like is the closed caption feature. It uses Google's sound processing algorithm to actually create live closed captions for everything. So the billions of hours of YouTube video that it's been tested on have been great. The other thing with it is that if somebody else is talking over top of another person, it actually coordinates both of them and will keep both of them. So I'm going to keep running on with the sentence until somebody tries to talk over top of me so that you can all see that everybody else can actually talk and it still shows up in the closed captioning down below. Thanks, Greg. So let's talk a little bit more about what's in here. So you can see up here at the top, we have the show everyone button. So this just shows you everybody that's actually in the conference right now. All of these names that are in here are actually people who are a part of Google Workspace. So if you see that Steve Alba said something interesting and you want to respond to him, you can always find him. He is just stephen.alb@campusstores.ca and send him an email, or you can chat with him, which brings us to the chat box. This chat box, unlike Zoom, doesn't have a direct messaging feature, so you can't DM somebody inside of the chat. The chat is one to everyone all the time. If you want to DM somebody, go ahead, chat.google.com and find their name. Just type it into the little search bar. It'll come up with them. You can send all the direct messages and send up all the chat rooms and multi-messengers and all the rest of it that you would like. The board is messaging me right now. The last one here is we'll be using this stuff throughout the conference. So we have breakout rooms, polls, and Q&A. Q&A is probably the one that's going to get used the most from you guys. If I put in a question here, People can upvote a question, so you just have to go over to it and give it the little upvote. We'll be sorting this for the most part by popularity. So if you have a question for a speaker and you want it to get responded to, great. Type it into the chat. Other people who are into the Q&A section, other people who have that particular opinion may actually want to give you an upvote for it, and then we'll just sort it by popularity. That's typically a cat question or a polling question, cats or dogs, but very similar with the polls. If you see a poll question come up, so you guys can vote on whether or not cats or dogs are more awesome. We aren't going to do the breakout room. You guys will get familiar with that in the next section. I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time, but that's the essentials for it. If you're having any sort of issues or you're not able to use one of the features that I've demonstrated here, or something else is going wrong, I'm available throughout the conference. You can get a hold of me at google@campusstores.ca. That's what this monitor is doing. The other computer is making sure that the stream stays live. So if you guys have any questions, again, just hit me up at google@campusstores.ca, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have. And back to Greg.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Steve. Does anybody have any questions they want to ask before we get started? Is anybody brave enough to ask a question with 129 people online? If not, you know where Steve, you can get a hold of Steve at as you said, google@campusstores.ca. So now I'm going to turn it over to Ginger Fitt, who is our association's president, and she's going to introduce today's opening keynote speakers. So Ginger.
Thank you, Greg. It is my pleasure to introduce our opening keynote speaker this morning. Kelsey Harmon Finn serves as the Chief Executive Officer of NACAS. Kelsey's vision is to bring business and student development-minded individuals together, believing the out-of-classroom experience is where skills for life are fostered and the student experience thrives. She has committed her career to creating team cultures that have a positive impact on their environment. With a focus on creating highly involved and functional staff teams that provide exceptional services, programs, and facilities that foster student success and contribute to the financial health of the institution, she is viewed as an expert in moving the ancillary services industry forward. Prior to joining NACAS, Kelsey's accomplished work history includes over 15 years of progressive experience in higher education. Her time in higher education has been focused on ancillary services and student services. Kelsey held positions at the University of California, Berkeley as the Executive Director of the ASUC Student Union, University of Nevada, Las Vegas as the Director of Student Union and Event Services, Illinois State University as a Conference and Event Coordinator, and College of DuPage as the Tech Prep and Gender Equity Coordinator. Originally from Illinois, Kelsey holds her Bachelor of Science in Parks and Recreation and Master of Science in Education from Illinois State University in Normal, Illinois. Kelsey and her husband Brian reside in Crozet, Virginia, where she enjoys training and competing in triathlons. Wow, that's great, Kelsey. So please help me by welcoming Kelsey Harmon Finn. Kelsey, it's all yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I'll do my own round of applause. That's how, you know, a little self-motivation there. Thank you for that introduction. It's great to be here. Stephen, I did not send you my presentation ahead of time, so we're gonna hope technology works and I keep it moving. Sorry about that. Yeah, I also think you got giveaways in the mail, and if you think about when you're in person at a conference and you get giveaways, you leave them in the hotel room a lot of times, but for some reason when you get them in the mail, they feel way more special. I'm not sure. So hopefully you all had that feeling. And then, you know, I'm here, some of you know me, some of you don't know me. This next hour that we will spend together, we're going to attempt some breakouts along the way. We'll see how fast and smooth they work and see how that goes. But what I do encourage you to do is sit back, relax a little, maybe have a notepad so you can jot down some ideas, but this presentation will be available to you long-term. The actual PowerPoint deck will be sent to Stephen so he can upload it in your community. So any of the steps that I talk about, anything that you hear from me, you'll be able to reference again. So don't feel like you have to write it down super fast. So we'll get started now, assuming everyone can hear me clearly. I will also try this present mode, which is super exciting. Can you see my screen? Maybe? Yeah, thumbs up. Sweet. This is so exciting. Okay, so what to focus on today for long-term success in ancillary and auxiliary services perspective. As mentioned in the intro, I do like doing triathlons. This year that's been halted. I am from Chicago, so pizza is core to my being, and I'm a little old school. This alarm clock sits on my nightstand still today. I think it's from junior high school, but it's really the most reliable way to wake me up. So my husband hates it and I love it. Maui is my most happy place. Whenever I can spend time there, I feel the best. I hope everyone has one. And as mentioned, these are the institutions that I spent time with here in the United States. As you can see, I worked from the middle of the country west, and now I live in central Virginia. So, and from a very young age, I really appreciated the idea of how you can have fun and be studious all at the same time. So I'm hopeful today's presentation gives you both of those components in one. And from there, I will get started. So auxiliary services through the ages, I think as we look forward, just a moment to look back. Those of you who've heard me talk, we've said this a lot. But in the late 1800s to early 1900s, we had student-run services. So it really all started with students wanting this outside of the classroom experience. In the mid-1900s, campus-run services. So campuses were like, hey, we can hire some folks to help the students have this out-of-classroom experience. In the 1990s to 2000s, we started to see this influx of outsourcing. So the corporate world really coming onto our campuses and partnering with us and providing services. From 2010 to early, I'll say early 2020, this intentionality of services. So what was the purpose and meaning behind all of the services that we are providing? And then we have 2020. Wasn't it fun? And I'm not sure about all of you, but we sit in 2021 and have a lot of the same happening, especially here in the United States. And I've talked to some friends in Canada, and I think you all in your news was consumed by our presidential election. So hopefully we can all relax a little from that going forward. So now we might wonder, where do we head from here? Where do we go? What does this look like? And I would say integration. This idea of our job is to come together to meet the needs of students collectively. And when I say students, in your world, I would say faculty, I would say staff, anyone that uses your services, how do you come together to meet their needs collectively? So where we're going today, I'm going to share some data that we at NACAS have collected. I'm going to talk about what impact I think we're currently seeing, what my suggestion for the future is, why that might be also hard, and then give you an opportunity to just really think about what is your direction and how do you take all of this information to move forward. So let's talk about data. We asked students, and to be clear, we did ask students in the US and in Canada. So I feel like I'm hopeful this information feels relevant to you all. But in 2019, we asked the students, how do you define success now? Students define success less by achievement or goal orientation, which was what they said in 2018, and more through a sense of happiness and fulfillment. Students define success with words like happiness, determination, dedication, and growth. Most critical to achieving success was academic personnel, student community, university health services, and non-academic personnel, auxiliary services. The biggest interferences to success was affordability of tuition, challenges or rigor of academic workload, and affordability of course materials. I'm not sure, special maybe is the word I come up with, that affordability of course materials still keeps coming up. Stores, you hold that space. But I think in this pandemic and where we're at, the challenges and rigor of the academic work we'll see go up as we ask students this year as a challenge because of this virtual environment. And I do think affordability will continue to be a top of mind for our students. So 2020, so In the last year, we asked students in the middle of it, how are we feeling? So 57% of college students reported that feeling uncertain is the emotion they feel most of the time, with loneliness being second at 20%. 80% say that an increase in stress levels has been the biggest impact of COVID-19, with 1/3 of them losing their jobs during the pandemic. 61% saying they agreed with the changes their campus made. 82% agree that what they want to hear from campuses is a messaging around future forward thinking. So how will the campus care of students for the rest of their college experience? And a lot of times I think we hear this and we're like, okay, this is our marketing department, this is our communications folks, this is the president or chancellor of the university systems. But really, I think it matters. Every department's messaging matters. So how are you communicating to students about their future and the impact that you have on it? So when we do return to campus, what's most important for college students when they return? In-person interactions in the classroom, ability to safely hold in-person events and meetings with their peers, physical distancing protocols in public spaces, feeling that my campus will hold peers accountable to safety standards. I think this idea and this expectation of how are we holding each other and students accountable as we move forward. So when thinking about visits to their on-campus bookstore, over half would like to see new or enhanced online shopping experiences, which I'm thinking many of you have already implemented. When considering on-campus transportation, they hope to see frequent and clear sanitation practices. And this was around transportation, but I believe this is related across ancillary services, such as in the store. So how are you showing sanitation practices when you do open your store? As students think about on-campus food store services, the majority hope to see more safety equipment in place. Same thing for the stores. When thinking about their college living experience, those who live on campus are most concerned with contactless access points to enter the building while keeping it secure. And then we asked the students, what issues are currently most important to you? Racial equity at about 50% was top of mind. Education came next, and healthcare. So in summary, from students care about social causes, they care about connection, community, and communication, and wellness defines everything. So really, when you're thinking about the services you're providing and how you're interacting with students, I think these three pieces, I guess number 2 cheats a little because we add a few in there, but how are you contributing to social causes? How are you remaining connected, building community, and communicating out, and taking care of and for each other? So then we asked you all as the service professionals, what's happening in your world? So 79% of respondents say their biggest challenge right now is focused around providing value and service. And this broke down into 2 categories: communicating and ensuring students and staff find value in potentially limited or changing campus operations, and being of service to other campus departments while strategizing lost revenue. So I think the second one, as it relates to stores in particular, is how are you strategizing? How are you in partnership with other departments, even in this virtual way of being? But how are you connecting with others and providing service? Feeling valued and valuable, overall relevant to staff and students in a restricted environment. Majority, if not all, respondents were worried about the stakeholders they served, primarily the students. You had feelings of trying just to survive, staff morale. Convenience versus experiential services was top of mind. So in summary, you all said providing value and service is top priority. How to provide convenient and experiential services were top of mind. Just trying to survive and staff morale are at play and serve a role in everything you all are doing. So the third category that we want to share a little information from is business partners. We asked what their biggest challenge was right now, how to project numbers in this ever-changing environment, and how to support clients, bring value, and help others. And then what made you most proud? In 2020, they said building stronger relationships, pivoting quickly, remaining essential. So in summary from our business partners, being of service and remaining essential were key. Financial projections are priority in the middle of uncertainty, and relationships matter. So I'd like you to pause here. We'll just take a moment. And Stephen, I don't know, can you make groups really small? I don't know how fancy this system is.
Groups of 4 work?
Like if we break into working groups, you break them into groups that they can talk?
Yeah.
Can you make them
I can put 4 people per group if that works for you.
Yeah, that's perfect. If we could just spend we're going to do this quick, but 3 to 4 minutes, maybe what does this information, how does this impact your work? Just real quick, what comes to mind? And if you have nothing to share, that's okay. But we'll see you back here in 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Got it.
How many people did you have? 4. Oh, we had just me and one guy.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming back. As you're coming back in, your mute button automatically hits. So just a little reminder, you might want to mute yourself because that's fantastic. So welcome back. Thanks for participating. Thank you, Stephen, for that. We will jump back into the presentation now. So hopefully you all had some things to share about how it impacts your work. And in the small group I was in, super excited that I feel like we're moving in this direction. So what I believe to be true is there's no post-COVID. It's here to stay. Loneliness is real, both in this moment and beyond. Students will choose a school based on a feeling, and students will stay at a school based on the out-of-classroom experience. So let's break these down a little bit, give you all a little more information. So there's no post-COVID. Human behavior have changed for the first time in a really long time in a somewhat significant way. So Oberland is a marketing research company, and so some of these stats come from there, but I'm just going to run through a few that I found incredibly fascinating. So 83% of Americans feel stressed and overwhelmed. 50% of consumers have changed brands for some or all of their needs during COVID. Unheard of numbers. 3 times more men are grocery shopping. Let's talk about that. More than 35% of consumers aged 19 to 26 have stopped shopping from brands who said nothing about systemic racism. 91% of people believe that their actions and actions of brands will lead to sustained change. So, right, this idea around they're looking for different products, where folks are spending their money matters. I think that's just something to keep in mind and will continue to evolve as we move forward. So this idea of loneliness being real, we're going to use Dr. Vivek Murth's The Healing Power of Human Connectedness. There's 3 types of loneliness he talks about. And I share this here because we talk a lot about students and the people we're serving, but I think in this moment we also need to take space to think about and talk about ourselves and this idea of loneliness. So there are 3 types: intimate or emotional loneliness. So this type of loneliness is kind of the one-on-one partnership. Who is your person, or who are your immediate people? And do you have access to them, and how are you staying connected to them? Do you live alone? Do you live with others? Do you live with others and still maybe feel lonely? Relational and social loneliness. So this is about this network of people. So typically this conference, you would be in person and you'd have little pods of folks that you would have conversation with, and you'd have these social interactions, and we're missing that. So how are you feeling that, or how are you being settled in what the situation is right now? And then collective loneliness. So this bigger mission, purpose. What do we all believe in? So as a collective, who is your collective? Because you believe in something together. It can be as simple as dog or cat people, as we started this presentation. So who are your people, and how are you finding them, and how are you staying connected with them? And so this idea of loneliness, I just encourage you to really think about that direct partnership, that community group, and that larger collective. And when you have this sense of, I'm really doing this all alone, how can you break that down, and where and in what places? And when you're talking with students or your staff, this gives you maybe some language to talk with them to help find a path forward, to maybe not feel so lonely. Because you might be alone, but you don't have to feel lonely. And the third one, this out of classroom experience needs to be both convenient and experiential for the long term. So convenient and experiential to me is human-centered. It's online and in person. It's extended hours. Figure it out, people. The hours have to be as many as you possibly can provide, whatever that looks like. Values driven, defined values, safety focused, develops confidence and trust in your campus community and the student community and even the community surrounding you all. And it includes wellness. So what? So what does this all mean? I believe the future will need 2 things that we will break down here for a hot second. It will need human connection and holistic student experience. So we're going to start with this human connection. And I think human connection really comes from courageous leadership. And I took this from Brene Brown. So those of you hopefully out there are familiar with Brene Brown. If not, Google her, look her up. Lots of great stuff out there. But courageous leadership, there's 4 parts. So the first part is this idea of rumbling with vulnerability. So a lot of times I think in leadership, we hear the word vulnerability and it just means I need to show all of me. I need to be vulnerable. It needs to come easy. But I like her concept that you really are rumbling with it. So what does it mean to be vulnerable? Am I vulnerable? Was I vulnerable? Is this the right place or space? So it's this idea that it's always on your mind, and it's maybe part of your ongoing thinking. So it's just a constant piece. The second one is living your values. And this idea of values. So, you can say, I value, let's see, I value the outdoors. Okay. So someone else can value the outdoors, but how I value the outdoors is actually being in it. I value it by hiking, by trail running, by smelling the air, by seeing the sunset, by seeing the sunrise, watching the stars. That's how I value the outdoors. But someone else might value the outdoors by looking at pictures, reading about how land has changed over time, etc. So living your values is having a value, but then showing the actions matching your value so that people really understand what that means for you. Braving trust. This idea of trust, it's a two-way street. How are you trusting others, and how are your actions showing up so others trust you? How are you doing what you say you're going to do? How are you continually showing up? And how are you being honest when you don't know, when you messed up, right? These are the choices. And this is where vulnerability then comes back into play. It's like, hey, I'm building trust and I'm coming to you and saying, hey, this happened and I'm sorry and it won't happen again, right? So how are you doing that? And then learning to rise. I think this was really, this sent it home for me. And this idea that failure is okay. And we aren't robots. We aren't perfect. We aren't meant to be perfect. We're meant to be human. And so we will make mistakes. We won't live up to other people's expectations. But a lot of times we will. And when we don't, what is our infrastructure, our personal infrastructure to rise up? How do we continue to show up even when it gets really hard? Because I think we are in a moment in time where it is hard. Even the days that feel really good, they are hard moments. So how are you learning to rise and pick yourself up as you go along? And how are you helping the people that you work with do the same thing? So courageous leadership, I will end with one little final thought on this whole idea of courageous leadership, leadership in fear. This idea of a fearless leader, to me, doesn't exist. The more research I do, the more things I listen to, fear is a constant in all good leaders. They choose to move forward even with fear, whatever that fear may be, right? So the fear of I'm not good enough, the fear of do I show up today? I'm not sure this is the right decision, but a leader keeps moving forward. And so I was sharing this with someone the other day and they said, I'm game for being a fearful leader. I was like, I love that. So, how are you grappling with fear and continuing to move forward, even if you don't know all the time? So holistic student experience. So we have human-centric values, human-centric way of being. So that was courageous leadership. And we're going to talk about the holistic student experience. So this idea that it's more than just money. And I love that the small group when I was in, one of the individuals said, my boss is asking less about the money and more about the number of people or other things. So it really just is more than money. It's overall student success. It's student and staff safety. It's mental health and wellness. It's food and financial support programs. It's career and work readiness. So how are you still employing students and helping towards career and work readiness? Connection to academics and credit. How are you showcasing this? Research, how are you partnering in or being part of research in the future? Get creative on where you as stores can contribute in this way, can think more than just money. And then I will add it's both and thinking. So it's service and profit. It's experiential and convenient. And it's diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. It's all of these pieces together. And maybe every single part of your world doesn't touch on every single thing, but it's okay if something needs to be convenient and fast because that's the best way to get something to students. But how are you thinking about the other components that are experiential? How are you thinking? Both and. How can I do both of these things? So I'm going to present just one more little idea before we break into groups again. But this idea of why is this so difficult, right? It's easy for me to sit here and say, it's more than money. It's both and thinking, human-centric. You got this, right? So why I think this is so difficult. The past formula for success. So let's call this before 1990 or even in the 90s, right? We had a task, we had time, and it equaled success. Voila, right? This industrial age was we did a task, we put in the time, and this outcome was a success. The time that we are in today, today's formula of success, there's people, there's relationships, there's culture, there's the task, there's the outcome, there's speed of time. I don't know. This list could keep going on, but it equals complexity. So when you're sitting there and you're thinking, I am just trying to survive, how do I even do these other things? I think, how do you take a moment to understand that the time we are living in is complex and being human-centered is just complexity. So with that in mind, I'm looking to do groups again. And what I'd really like for you all to share is, what do you think the opportunity is for you, for your store right now, related to either being human-centered, both and thinking, maybe share something that you've done or something that you're working on. Take a minute to think about it. We have a little bit longer in our groups this time. So let's do, I don't know, 7 minutes feels good. And we'll do groups of 4 again, Stephen, if you're good with that. Assuming he's out there.
He's working
Yes.
on it. There he is. Yeah.
All right, see y'all soon.
in the
Welcome back. Welcome back. You're all becoming experts just like that, in and out. When you come back, it's good stuff. So before I move to kind of wrapping up the presentation, one question that we were just starting to talk about in a small group I was in that I think is relevant for the whole group was this question around the cost of course materials and how that's a limitation for student success. It continues to be something students say is an issue, say is top of mind for them. And so how do we solve for this? And, you know, I think digital, I think inclusive materials, I'm not sure the terminology in Canada and how you're all talking about it, but here in the US, they're talking about, you know, a fee for course materials, and then everyone gets everything that they possibly need for their courses. I think all of that is great. But I also think there is a cost to education, and materials come with a cost to get the full education experience. So to me, the bigger issue is the messaging around. I think the media and folks have been able to grab on to a message around course materials are just too expensive. And there hasn't been any conversation around the why. And maybe they are. And maybe in some cases they should be lowered. And I don't claim to be an expert to know how pricing comes about or how publishers decide pricing. So I'm not going to speak to that. And if there's any publishers on here, I'm sure your job is really hard. But I do think there's a way for organizations such as CSC to have, how are you communicating around the value of course materials? How are you talking about their contributions to the holistic student experience and get people away from talking about the money? Because the reality is if people understand the purpose, the priority, and they feel like it's a value add, the money becomes less of an issue. So that could be maybe, I don't know, an initiative for you all as an organization at some point to have a conversation and what that might look like. So if you do have other questions, if there were questions that came up in your small group, please put those in the Q&A and I will come back here in a couple of minutes to answer any of those. So we will share my screen here. And we will finish. So what is the opportunity? So at this point, the true currency of social connection is not just social proximity, but rather vulnerability, empathy, and focused attention. So I really, really encourage you and ask you to think about, where are you putting your attention? Is your attention on the spin of the everyday, of the it feels so urgent and everything's changing, but nothing's changing every day? Or are you setting aside time to really think about, how do you create connection? How do you add value? How do you develop or enhance the relationships you already have? I say this all, and I say, how are you slowing down? I feel like speed has been rewarded for so many years, and we are at the point of exhaustion, and that speed is not the path forward. I mean, it may be at times. If something happened to your store and it feels very urgent and it really is urgent, then tend to that. But otherwise, how are you taking space to reflect, to rejuvenate, to move forward with and for other human beings? And how are you getting really clear about your department culture? So how are you creating this culture within a culture, which I think is always a super fascinating conversation when you work inside of a higher education institution. So how are you getting clear about your department culture and how it fits with students and campus needs, right? How are you adding value? How are you contributing? How are you having conversation? And then pick your direction. Your brain may feel like this. Mine does on most days. But how are you taking a moment to decide, this is where I'm spending my time. This is the direction that matters. And you may have to pivot. You will have to pivot. You will have to change directions every once in a while. But picking it intentionally and moving forward would be my biggest suggestion. And that's all I have for you all today as far as presentation goes. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I understand that paying attention during this environment is really hard. So I will see if there are any questions, thoughts.
So we'll encourage everybody to use that Q&A feature in the up in your activities there. And I think we do have one question. Kelsey, how do we communicate without showing our emotions through our smiles, as masks tend to mask our smile?
Yeah, and on my screen, I see Brandon Hunter. He's wearing a mask. I'm guessing I'm making an assumption there. So head nod, thank you for validating that. But, right, thumbs up. There's that. His eyes are moving. His head is shaking. It is a whole body experience. You know, I will share, so my husband, some of you may guess I'm fairly extroverted. I've been this way my whole life. He's fairly introverted. We offset each other really well. And he's like, the best part about masks is no one knows I'm smiling or not. So I don't ever have to smile. And I'm like, yeah, but your eyes. I think we just take for granted how much our eyes and our whole body language really shows emotion, even when we don't think about it. So you got eyes, you have hands, you have a whole body. So step back. I think, a lot of you, we sit on these calls, which is great, but it's okay to stand. It's okay to move around. Yeah, even in person. I'm sure some of you are doing drive-by textbook pickups, all sorts of things. So you have to be a little more extroverted in these moments.
There's a next question, or Carrie, you had made a note. Kelsey, I assume you can see those? Yeah.
Yep, I got it. So, oh man, immediacy. So I think it's worth spending time figuring out how you can take some things that need mass response or immediate response and making them feel personal. So how is your technology working in your favor? Are there automated responses that help give students a feeling of, hey, I actually am being heard and they'll get back to me? And then, is there really a time where there is immediate needs for students? At the start of the semester, the academic year, you know what, your life and the role that you're in, you're kind of just going to be frantic and you're going to be needing to meet their needs in an immediate way. But I think every need that the student has isn't immediate. And so you're allowed, I think, giving yourself permission to say, this one isn't immediate, this is immediate. Here are some systems that can help meet all of these immediate needs that feel personal. And then here are the ways we're going to address this. Some of it is just communicating an expectation of when you'll respond back. And you know what? Letting it go. They'll be fine. they'll be okay. Yeah. So that's what I got. I don't know if there's anyone else with other brilliant ideas on managing students' expectations. The last thing I would say is you can't, no matter what you do, you might not meet other people's needs. So how are you really settled in? We're providing the best service we possibly can. We're doing things in a timely way with the resources that we have. And you lay your head down at night knowing that. Because sometimes that's just about it. But any other brilliant ideas, feel free to chat those to each other, because I'm sure in community you all can come up with some other stuff. Okay, there's another one. Let's see. Give me a second to read it. Yes, that's a great point, right? So the value of the materials is how faculty instructors use their materials. So I'm going to go back to the relationship piece, and how are you developing relationships with certain faculty on campus? So that way, it's like, hey, faculty like research, right? So we know one of the top constraints for students or barriers for success is the cost of course material. We also think it's about the value of the course material. So how can you help us tell the students why they need what they need for their coursework? It's not just in your syllabi or in a writing that says you need these 5 things. It's like, why do you actually need it, and the value of it. So it's just, I think it's how are you engaging in relationship to help that value proposition? Who can help you do it? Who can help be your messenger when you're not in the room? And then also when you're talking to faculty, I mean, I don't know. I think back to when I was talking to faculty about their adoptions and textbooks. Some of them just looked at me like I was crazy because they would do their own thing. But it's like, we have to be in partnership together because we are of one campus, and we need to really work together. And so, some of the bigger courses might need more time, and it's worth your time and energy. It's slow. But boy, yeah. There's so many players that impact what that value statement is. How do we move people away from talking about the money? It's tough not to. So be the trailblazer. When you show up in a meeting, if it's a meeting where you can say, I'm not talking about money, it might come up and I'm going to have a different response, right? I can show you the money at a later time, but today I want to talk about this. How are we adding value? What's the purpose? I think it's ask a question with a question. When they ask a money question, so why? And I know this is hard right now. We're in the middle of this pandemic. Money is, for lack of better terms, bleeding out for everyone. Everyone's trying to find money everywhere. But how can you be a leader of a conversation that says, I agree with you, the money is important, but we need to talk about our purpose and our value so that we can make money, right? So shifting the conversation, and you may have to be a broken record and do it over and over and over again. I will say I just listened to a podcast. Brene Brown has a Dare to Lead podcast on Spotify, and she had Simon Sinek on. And they really talked about this infinite, he has a book, Infinite Mindset, and they really talked about this idea of money is the outcome of whatever the purpose, the drive is. And so how are you that change agent? Because the other people around you probably aren't going to be. I know in one of my small groups, I had an accountant from a store. And wouldn't it be super fun if your accountant actually shows up and says, what's our purpose? What's our value? Why are we doing this? And contributes in a conversation and then can show the money on the back end of what's happening. I mean, I don't know, just saying, could be kind of cool. Change it up. I'm not seeing any more questions. Greg, do you have anything you'd like for me to talk about?
No, that was my question about the money thing. How do you get people to, how do you get administration and stuff to not talk about money, especially at this time? So Ginger asked that question for me. So does anybody else have any other questions? Or
Greg, the other thing I would just add about that is like it's participation, it's number of interactions. So how are you showing other metrics as well that get people excited? I would add to that.
Mm-hmm. The other question, Kelsey, is where were you getting some of your statistics? And I assume they're all obviously from the United States, but I think that was one of the questions that we had talked about in our breakout rooms.
Yeah, so the first part of the statistics, so anything from the students, auxiliary, ancillary, professional, and business partner, those are all US and Canada surveyed individuals. We partner with a company called Riddle and Bloom, And so that's all our own research. So we do that annual student success study and research through the student database that they have. So that's all ours. And then when I did go into the human behaviors changing, that's Oberland.com. They're a marketing and research firm here in the US. So that was all US focused data.
Mhm.
But I'm pretty confident that, 3 times more men in Canada are doing grocery shopping. If not, those of you on the call, little grocery store. Just kidding.
Is there any other last minute questions for Kelsey before we close out our first session? Hearing none. Kelsey, I apologize about my dog. It was the mailman arrived at the door, so it's always the mailman for some reason. So I apologize for that.
That's all right. It gets excited. You got to get excited for some things.
So,
Well, thank you all for the time. I really appreciate it. I will make sure you have the slide deck and my email to go along with that. If there's any questions or follow up, I'm happy to engage.
Thank you. Ginger. Yeah.
thank you so much, Kelsey, and thank you for your energy and your passion for student experience and for the ancillary or auxiliary side, depending on what you're calling it at your school. Really interested in that courageous leader part. I've always tried to approach things, as it's my job as a manager to do what I should do it, I need to do it, I have to do it. And lately, being so overwhelmed, I found my answer to a lot of questions when people ask me to do new things is, I'll do it if I don't cry. And that's not typically my personality, but that is what I've been answering everything with probably for the last 2 months. I said, if I cry, I'm not doing it. So
I love it. I love it.
So Kelsey, as a token of our appreciation for sharing your time with all of us today, CSC will be making a $500 donation to a charity chosen by the CSC Board of Directors on behalf of all of our speakers presenting at this year's conference. Thank you once again for your great presentation. And just again, for all your energy and your passion. This concludes our first session of the day. Our second session of the day are the breakout sessions starting at 2 p.m. Eastern, so that's 3 p.m. Atlantic, 1 p.m. Central, 12 noon Mountain, and 11 a.m. Pacific. All members are invited to join for these sessions. We have breakout sessions for both large stores and small stores in the areas of store operations, course materials, and general merchandise. The link for these sessions is available in your member space calendar. Enjoy the short break, and we will see you again shortly. Thanks again, Kelsey.
Thank you, Kelsey. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.